Napoleon didn't just set out to conquer Europe, he turned it into a massive revenue stream. While his armies of tens of thousands crossed borders with mechanical precision, toppling kingdoms and redrawing maps, a much colder and more calculated drama was unfolding behind the scenes. Napoleon had built a war mechanism that forced Europe to personally finance its own occupation. Welcome to pyramid economics. This is the place where money, power, and history collide, and where nothing is ever as simple as it seems. When Napoleon took power in 1799, France was a poor nation, a financial wreck. The monarchy had collapsed under debt, and the revolution had bankrupted the country through hyperinflation caused by the uncontrolled printing of paper money, assignats. Trust was gone, and savings had evaporated. Napoleon knew one thing perfectly: you cannot wage a permanent war in the midst of monetary chaos. His first move wasn't invasion, it was stability. In 1800, he founded the Bank of France. In 1803, he introduced the franc germinal, a currency based on gold and silver that was predictable and reliable. He centralized tax collection and reduced corruption. At home, he was a disciplined financial expert, but his real plan was different. He didn't want to crush French citizens with the cost of war. So, he exported the bill. Napoleon's model was brutal and effective: conquer a country, impose a massive indemnity, reparations, and feed the French troops out of that state's pocket. After the victory at Austerlitz, Austria was forced to pay 40 million francs. After bringing Prussia to its knees, he imposed a burden of 120 million francs. A single indemnity could cover the cost of the army for months. Napoleon had turned conquest into cash flow. However, this system had a mathematical constraint: the necessity of constant growth. To open new revenue channels, he had to keep winning wars and expanding borders. The empire was like a company growing through debt. Growth covered the liabilities, but the moment growth stopped, everything would tumble. In 1806, unable to defeat Britain at sea, Napoleon decided to crush it economically. With the Continental System, he cut off Europe's trade with Britain. On paper, it was a massive move, but in practice, it struck at the very heart of the European economy. Smuggling exploded, merchants went bankrupt, and when Russia could no longer withstand this pressure and began to violate the system, the doors were open to one of the most massive financial disasters in history. Napoleon gathered a massive army of 600,000 men to invade Russia. This was the largest army Europe had seen to date, and it resulted in total financial ruin. Logistics lines stretched for thousands of kilometers. When the campaign failed and the infamous winter set in, Napoleon suddenly lost not just his soldiers, but his strategic capital. Napoleon's model relied on money coming from victory. The Russian defeat brought only cost. There was no indemnity, no loot, only a massive debt. A crucial difference emerged here. Napoleon's system was an expansion addict and fragile. Britain's system, however, was based on institutional debt. The British sold long-term bonds through the stock exchange to finance their allies. Investors trusted the British state. By 1815, British debt exceeded 200% of its GDP, but the system still functioned because the institutions were already firmly established. Napoleon was defeated by armies on the field, but he suffered his true defeat against Britain's deep capital markets. Image comparing French military expenditures versus British national debt growth 1800 to 1815. Napoleon's story isn't just a war tale from the past, it's a summary of modern finance. Externalization. Today's superpowers also try to push their costs outside their borders. Exporting inflation through sanctions, trade policies, and reserve currency dominance is actually a modern indemnity method. Leveraged growth. If a system requires constant growth, the debt burden will crush you the moment growth stops. Napoleon's 600,000-man army could not protect him when the financial engine stalled. Trust is cash. Even the strongest army on the field may not be able to compete with the strongest bond market. Britain's ability to borrow proved more durable than Napoleon's capacity for plunder. Napoleon's mistake was assuming that political dominance would generate economic resources forever. This was a growth model without a plateau strategy. History whispers this to us: real empires are not those with the most land, but those who manage credit the best. Napoleon's army was spectacular and innovative, but it had to keep moving. The moment the movement stopped, the bill arrived. If this story gave you a new perspective on the invisible bond between power and money, hit subscribe. History isn't just dusty pages, it's a mirror whispering how today's wallet and the world work.